Hello all, Bianca White here, your friendly Lexus rep, bringing you Shepards training today. So today what we're going to cover is Shepards. In a great big nutshell, we really use Shepards for two main reasons. The first reason we Shepardize is to validate, make sure our law is still good law. But there's another second really important reason we Shepardize as well, which is to expand your authority. When we're focusing on the first reason, validation, we really only look at two tabs just to make sure our law hasn't been overruled. But when we're Shepardizing to expand our analysis, expand our authority, we really are going to utilize all the tabs, and we'll show you how we do that as we walk through. Remember, when you're Shepardizing, you can Shepardize every type of primary authority there is: cases, statutes, regulations, court rules. But you can also Shepardize other things you might not realize. For instance, law review articles and patents, restatements, things like that. Shepards is basically a citator, and all citator means is list of citations. So it's a list of citations back to some authority that you are analyzing. In most cases, Shepards is updated within 24 hours of a decision being rendered. There are outliers, but that's just kind of a general rule. And there's this little video that we're going to watch about why we want to make sure that we Shepardize, so this does not happen to us.
Will change the truth.
Why don't you address the legal issue on motions to reconsider, Counsel?
Yes, and I meant to start with that, Your Honor. I got sidetracked.
That would help.
There is no legal provision for a motion for reconsideration in criminal law. That is only in civil law. It is recognized in Civil Code of Procedure, Section 1008. And what they require in civil law is that the party seeking reconsideration show newly discovered facts. In this case, we have no newly discovered facts with respect to the motion for reconsideration of Laura McKinney.
But doesn't the case law dealing with that particular code section include criminal cases? If you Shepardize that, you come up with some criminal cases.
We did. I believe that none were found, Your Honor. We don't have any in our motion, which leads me to believe that no, there aren't any criminal cases under that section. And you asked me that question because you knew Ms. Lewis wrote the motion, huh?
No.
But no, as far as I know, there are no criminal law cases that involve that section because it's not recognized in criminal law. So, I mean, at least in theory, we didn't have to have all the argument. But
so if my Pepperdine law clerks found some,
did they? Criminal cases? And what do they say?
Say it's applicable to criminal law cases.
Okay. Nevertheless, we don't have any newly. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Never mind.
Okay.
There's a rule in the civil procedure that an unfounded motion for reconsideration is the subject of sanctions. Just an aside.
Ooh. That is why we must Shepardize. We do not want to be Marcia in that particular moment and not have all the authority or not have a full picture of how our particular legal resource is applicable. Alrighty, so this handsome young man here is Frank Shepard. He is the forefather of Shepards. So he was a door-to-door salesman who sold legal materials, and he saw this kind of need in the legal community of updating law. Because back in the day, there was no Lexus, so you couldn't go on and see what new opinions had recently come out. So what he developed was this sticky system, sticky tab system. So as new opinions would come out and refer back to other opinions, he would create tabs. Well, as you can imagine, the world of case law only gets bigger, never goes away, right? Nothing ever is sunset, if you will. So this got kind of cumbersome. So the next reiteration of Shepards were these books. So you'll actually find these currently in law libraries, but it's really not an efficient way to research anymore because you have Shepards at your fingertips, a lot more efficient and a lot more effective. A quick overview of Shepard signals are right here. And for negative analysis, when we're looking for validation purposes, we're really going to focus on these first three Shepard signals, specifically these first two. Red, of course, means there is negative treatment. Q simply means questioned. The yellow triangle, it doesn't often create a problem for validation. There are a few things you want to look at specifically limited and criticized. Those are the ones that you really kind of want to dig into and make sure it's not limited for your factual scenario or criticized in a way that's relevant for you. Now, the second reason we Shepardize is to expand our analysis, and this is something that really sets Lexis and Shepards apart, and that is the positive treatment. So only Shepards provides this positive analysis, meaning not only have this case or statute been cited or referred to, but it's also been followed. And in the world of stare decisis, that's a really big deal. The next Shepard signals are blue, and blue just kind of means neutral. So when you have this blue symbol with an A, that's just a citing reference with some analysis. Not negative, not positive, just an analysis. Explained by is a really good example. The next one is the blue with an I, and that really is just kind of a citation referring to it. The last Shepard signal to be really cognizant of is this red exclamation point. And this is the equivalent of the red stop sign on a case, only the red exclamation point is going to appear on statutes and administrative codes. So if you see that, you must dig deep and see what created that negative analysis. Now, before we get started, we are going to kind of use this fact pattern to start our initial search. And this is pretty typical. So a partner's asked you to look at the status of McNeil versus Economics Lab. He has relied on this case before to establish front pay. Kind of a, I guess, background, if you will. In discrimination cases, the default remedy is reinstatement. Reinstatement meaning you get your job back. Well, in some cases, getting your job back isn't a super great remedy, right? So if it was a hostile environment or sexual harassment, going back to that position may not be an equitable remedy that a court would want to award. In that case, some courts have allowed for front pay, which basically means from the day you were terminated or the day you left, going forward to some period of time, you'll get paid for that period. So while not the default, some courts have allowed it. The assigning partner has assigned you to update this case, validate it. Is it still good law? Can we still rely upon McNeil for the idea of front pay as a remedy in a discrimination case? So let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing we're going to do is just pull up McNeil. 800 F second 111 search. Now we're pulling up the case because I want to show you a few things that Shepards provide you even before you look at the Shepards report. We have here kind of the quick overview, talking about the issue, establishing front pay. As we scroll down, we have these headnotes, the points of law of the case. And note there are a whole bunch of points of law of the case. The reason I want to peruse through here and show you these different points of law is note within each headnote, so there are 18 in this particular case, you have them broken down topically. Damages, back pay, front pay. And within these headnotes, these points of law, you're given a Shepard signal for that specific point. So even though the overall Shepard signal for this case is a red stop sign, which we're going to investigate, for these single points of law, we can actually see the cases that have cited back to this opinion have actually followed it for headnote 17, or followed it and just kind of had that cautionary analysis for headnote 16. We could also narrow down this case by these specific headnotes. So we could simply say Shepardize, narrow by this headnote, and it will provide a Shepard's report specific to this point of law. All right, so be aware of those. The next really nice feature before we leave here is this reason for Shepard signal. So by clicking this, what it's going to do is provide you the most impactful passage from the most impactful case that created this negative treatment. So the Costin opinion overruled McNeil in part, and here is kind of the most important passage that created that analysis. So this is giving us some context, but we really need to dive deep. So we're going to Shepardize this entire opinion, get the entire Shepard's report, and kind of dig in and see exactly what it says. Now the first thing to be aware of are the tabs. So we have 4 tabs, but remember I said for validation purposes, which is what we're doing, we're only going to focus on the first 2 tabs. And in fact, because the Shepard signal appears here by citing decisions, we're actually only going to focus on that tab. If the Shepard signal appeared here, appellate history, that would mean something happened in this line of opinion that created that negative analysis. And it's possible that you could have a Shepherd signal for both. So if there was a red stop sign on both, then there was likely negative treatment in both this line of the case and some other decision referring back to this opinion. All right, so let's come over here to citing decisions. Now, the first thing that we could do, and probably should do, is narrow it down by our analysis. So we can narrow down by warning and questioned and even cautionary analysis if we want. But because we're Shepardizing this case for a very specific purpose, I actually like to come down here first, come to search within results, and simply say front pay. And what that's going to do is read through all of these opinions in the Shepard's report and surface those cases that talk about front pay. The other kind of nice thing about that is if you notice over here, it's gotten rid of pretty much all the negative treatment and only left us with one distinguishing case. So that makes it a lot more efficient. And it's even more efficient, I think, than using the head notes. Because even though we could narrow it down to specific head notes, I don't want to look at just one issue of front pay. I wanted to look at the global idea of front pay. So we could have done head notes if we were looking more granularly. Alrighty, once we're here, we could then say distinguished by, and then we're narrowed down to the one opinion that distinguished McNeil. And we note that it's from the 7th Circuit. So depending upon what circuit we're sitting in, that may or may not be important. All right, so I'm going to clear all my filters because I want to show you one other really nice feature within the Shepard's report. Remember, when you're looking at a Shepard's report, it's always going to default to the highest court first. So if there are ever any Supreme Court opinions, they're going to be up at the top. We could always come over here and narrow to our specific circuit, right? Because if we're sitting in the 6th Circuit, which I am, do I really care that much what the 5th Circuit had to say? I really don't. But we do care about the Supreme Court. So I recommend using select multiple and doing any Supreme Court opinions and the circuit you're sitting in. But also, just to give you some context, because this is the full report, I can tell you right out of the gate that there are no Supreme Court opinions because it's not pre-populating up at the top. After the Supreme Court opinions, you're then going to have the Court of Appeals and District Courts by, I guess, chronological order. So 1st Circuit, Court of Appeals, 1st Circuit District Courts, and then 2nd Circuit Court of Appeals, 2nd Circuit District, so on and so forth, and then your states are going to appear after that. So right out of the gate, I can tell you there are no 1st Circuit cases and there are no 2nd Circuit Court of Appeals cases because we're starting out here with 2nd Circuit District Courts. We also have this really nice little graph here. So by clicking this graph signal, it's going to take the entire Shepard's report, all 117 opinions, and break it down into kind of like a graphical overview, if you will. This is going to tell us a couple of things. The first thing that it's showing me is that there is a split in treatment. So within the 2nd Circuit, courts have both followed and overruled some portion of McNeil. Well, because we just dug in, we can see it's been followed for the issue of front pay. It's been overruled on some issue. So that can be the split of authority. This can also indicate a split in circuits. So you can come over here and take a look at the analysis and the circuits to kind of ascertain and figure out those splits in circuits. The second graph available to you is really helpful as well because it's going to give you the analysis by date. So as we scroll back here, we actually see this negative treatment happened in 1988. So if the assigning partner says, hey, I relied upon McNeil in 2000, it's a really good indication that we don't need to dive too deep because this negative treatment happened way back in 1988 and he has since relied upon it. All right, so let's go back to our regular view. And the last thing I want to show us before we leave this Shepard's report is this Shepard signal to create an alert. So we click that and it allows you to create an alert on this Shepard's report. And what that's going to do is update your Shepard's report for you rather than you having to go in and update it every day. You can name it, you can monitor it however you want. I want any changes, just negative changes, or you can customize it. You select your delivery options. How long do you want this report to be delivered? How frequently? And how do you want it delivered? Do you want it emailed to you or do you just want it to pop up when you log into Lexis? And then, of course, you can share it with someone in your bill group as well. I'm going to take a pause here and we'll start part 2.